South Carolina came awfully close to pulling off a real stunner today. The Gamecocks were trailing by 17 points at the half against Arkansas in the first round of the SEC tournament on Wednesday and cut the lead down to 1 with just a few minutes remaining. But as has been the case all year for this team, they came up short in the end, and it was not enough as they suffered a 72-68 season-ending loss to the Razorbacks, and this was a really good effort by the Gamecocks. Make no mistake about it, to be dead in the water in the first half. Arkansas went on an 11-0 run to close out the first half, and South Carolina was only down by 6 at one point, but then again, like I said, Arkansas went on that run and took a 17-point lead into the break, and that's tough to come back from for any team. But give this team a lot of credit. They played really good defense, didn't have the greatest offensive scoring runs, but it was a 19-2 run midway through the second half that allowed them to cut the lead down to 1, and they were able to get really close. But I think the momentum changing play in this game was when they were down by 1, Arkansas missed another shot, which was a really common trend for most of the second half, but Jordan Butler had a real opportunity to grab the rebound and give South Carolina another possession to try to go down and take the lead, and he couldn't corral the rebound. Had a nice space, I think, to go and get the board, but went off his hands, and Arkansas ended up hitting a three-pointer just a few seconds later. That felt like the moment where Arkansas didn't have a pulse, and they kind of came back to life and were able to do enough to hold on. So the season does now end for the Gamecocks, and it's going to be an off-season with a lot of questions. Who's coming back? Who's leaving? The obvious question is, what's Colin Murray-Boyles going to do after the season? He's definitely could potentially be a high NBA draft pick this summer, and when he was asked point blank what's his future going to look like, he said something that he's going to take time to talk with his family, coaches, and kind of his inner circle to figure out what's next for him. And if he's not back, which wouldn't be surprising, you're going to have to figure out how you're going to put together your roster. And Lamont Paris will have his end of season meetings with the players and staff and stuff coming up relatively soon, and that's going to be a real evaluation process that he did say is going to be a very honest time to figure out what you do next, because you went 12-20 this year, 2-16 in the SEC, and you had a first-round exit in the SEC tournament. Obviously, something's got to change going into next year, but a few players have already made it clear that they want to come back next year. Some of them said they will be back next year, so we'll have more information on all that from what the locker room quotes were on GamecockCentral.com. We'll get into specifics here about that. You can go ahead and read about it on there whenever I do get the story up relatively soon today. But again, it's a disappointing year for South Carolina, one that really, you ask yourself, how did you go from winning 26 games last year, making the NCAA tournament, to being the worst team in the SEC this year? It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And there are obviously a lot of things that went wrong for the team this season, but it is clear that a lot does need to change going into next season, and got to figure it out going into the fourth year of the Paris tenure at South Carolina. So again, South Carolina suffers a 72-68 loss to close out the 2024-25 season here in Nashville. Appreciate you guys tuning in as always for these post-game recap videos. We'll have lots of men's basketball off-season coverage to come, starting obviously now that the off-season is beginning, and we'll go from there. So that's going to do it from Nashville. For GamecockCentral.com, I'm Jack Veltri.